Hello everybody, it's Sarah, and today is my second video in my year-end wrap-up series. Usually I actually noticed I have 4 videos because usually I also do a video either talking about my surprises over the year or my favorite series, or I just have some additional third video in terms of, you know, talking about my favorite books, least favorite books, not counting my stats, and fourth video if you count my stats. But this year I realized that my reading was pretty middle of the road. So we'll only have a video of my favorite reads of the year as well as my least favorite reads of the year. And I'm looking at my phone, by the way. I also actually had a lot more 2.5 star ratings and like under 2.5 star ratings this year than I usually have. And yeah, just overall, just had a very interesting reading year. I felt like a lot of the books either were like, yeah, you know, I had a good enough time with this, 3 stars, or yeah, I really enjoyed it, but it's not something that's gonna stick with me, 4 stars. And so yeah, but let's talk about the books that were below that. Let's talk about the books that I actually disliked. I will not have, you know, a specific order to the books that I will be talking about. However, if I talk about them towards the beginning, then I, you know, enjoyed them a little bit more, and if I talk about them towards the end, then it's more likely that I hated them. So the first 2 books I have, and I actually unhauled a lot of the books already, so I need my phone so I don't forget any of the books. But, so the first 2 books that I want to talk about, I kind of want to talk about at once, and that is Crimson Death and Sucker Punch in the Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series. I believe they're like book 26 and book 28 or something along those lines. Both of those were 2.5 stars. The reason why I'm not really that bothered that I didn't enjoy them that much is because at this point I don't read Anita Blake for enjoyment. I purely read it because I have read this series for so long at this point, like for over 10 years at this point, that I am too stubborn to stop reading it. And so because of that, I know that there will be a lot of duds. I am actually more surprised if I end up giving a book, you know, 3.5 stars. I don't think I've given a book higher than that in a while in that series. But yeah, I'm not really bothered that I'm not enjoying them. Like, some of the books are a bit worse, especially in terms of the biphobia, but yeah, I'm not reading them to read good books. So, what can I say? Then next I have 2 books that, you know, just really weren't for me, but that I also don't really feel that strongly about. They were like the type of 2.5 stars where it's like, there's just nothing for me to grab onto in these books. Like, they didn't engage me whatsoever, they didn't interest me, not with writing style, not with content, not with anything. The first of those 2 books is The Cat Who Saved Books by Sosuke Natsukawa. This is a story about a boy whose grandfather died, and his grandfather left him his bookshop. And one day there's this talking cat that comes and tells our main character that he has to save the books. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, I wasn't particularly one for the writing style. It is a translated work, so, you know, might have something to do with that. Obviously, sometimes things are lost in translation. That's just what happens. But aside from that, I just wasn't engaged with the book at all. The reason why I finished it was because it's under 200 pages, so I was done really quickly, but it was just, you know, it was very emotionless read for me. And then the second book that kind of belongs in the same category is another translated book, actually, so it might also be that, you know, something got lost in translation, either, you know, in the actual translation of the language or just culturally. And that book is The Dangers of Smoking in Bed by Mariana Enriquez, which is a short story collection by an Argentinian author. All of these short stories are kind of like gothic horror. They're not horror in the type that they're scary, but, you know, unsettling atmosphere type horror, magical realism type horror books, and they're all set in Buenos Aires. So first of all, I am not particularly a fan of short stories in general. I like to dig into stories a lot of times. I prefer longer stories typically, so this already wasn't a format where I thought that this was gonna end up to be a book that I loved. But just overall, I just didn't like the vibes overly much. Honestly, I don't even remember that much of this book, so I can't even tell you that much of why I didn't like it that much, but yeah. Also, I said that much a lot just now. But yeah, it just wasn't for me, so moving on. So next I have a book that I actually wanted to talk about first because it's the one that I enjoyed the most out of all of these books, where I don't think it's actively a bad book. It was just a disappointing read for me, but I did give it 3 stars in the end, and that was Fevered Star by Rebecca Roanhorse, which was the sequel to Black Sun that came out this year. Well, Fevered Star came out this year. Black Sun came out in, I believe, 2020, if I remember correctly. And Black Sun was one of my favorite books in the year that I read it. I absolutely loved Black Sun. I reread it again this year. I really enjoyed it again this time. And Fevered Star just didn't live up to the hype that I had built in my head because of how much I had enjoyed Black Sun. So the series is called Between Earth and Sky, and it's an adult high fantasy series that is inspired by pre-Columbian indigenous cultures from the Americas. And in the first book, you basically have this tension that is built towards a date, which is the date that has been prophesied, and you follow 3 different characters as, you know, they pass their days going towards that day. One of the characters is a central character in the prophecy, another character is one who helps him, and the third character is a character that is opposed to that prophesied savior slash the one who will bring the end, basically. It's kind of complicated, it's kind of difficult to explain what the series is about. And so the second book picks up a plot that ended quite spectacularly and ended in a very high tension way at the end of the first book, and it just can't keep the tension from the first book. Also, in the first book we had some characters that were traveling together, and I really enjoyed their dynamic. Their dynamic, in fact, was the thing that I enjoyed the most in the book. However, in the second book they are not together anymore, and it just, you know, that central dynamic that drew me so much to the first book just wasn't there, and there also wasn't anything else where I was like, okay, I can grip onto that instead. It just overall felt very middle book. It felt very much like it was just bridging the stuff that's supposed to happen towards the last book, towards the finale of the series. At least I think the third book is gonna be the finale of the series. It was also rather short for an adult high fantasy, like it's under 400 pages long. And yeah, overall it just sadly let me down a little bit. I am still interested in picking up the last book in the series though. So back to the books that I actually really didn't enjoy. Next I have The Goblin Emperor by Catherine Addison. This book was one of the buddy reads for my book club. My book club is of Queens, Witches and Valkyries, and it's all about reading adult fantasy written by women and genderqueer folks. And this was the first book that I read for the book club that I just did not enjoy. I actually have a full review of this, so I will leave that link down below and up there. But overall, I just felt like it was trying to be both cozy fantasy and political fantasy, but for the political fantasy it didn't work because it was first-person perspective and written in a way where we just couldn't follow what any of the political factions were up to. I did not enjoy the main character. I was absolutely not interested at all in him, and I just really didn't vibe with the writing style. I felt like, and this is coming from me, someone who enjoys flowery writing, I just felt like the writing style was way too pretentious and way too over the top, and also at the same time not consistent enough. So yeah, I just overall really did not enjoy this book. So 4 books left on the list of books that I just did not enjoy that much in 2022 / were big disappointments for me. And the next one I have is Dawnshard by Brandon Sanderson. I won't talk too much about this because we all already know that I just don't like Brandon Sanderson's writing anymore. And yeah, I was not interested in this. I don't like Brandon Sanderson novellas because, not because of how they're written, but because for me, the thing that novellas are, or the thing that novellas should be when you talk about a fantasy series, a high fantasy series, is they should give you additional information that sometimes is fun to have, but that is not important to the main plot of the series. You should be able to read a central series without having read novellas in it. Brandon Sanderson, you absolutely have to read the novellas to get what's going on, so I don't like Brandon Sanderson novellas. Then the next one I have is the Excalibur Curse by Kirsten White. This was the 3rd and final book in the Camelot Rising, I believe the series was called, which is a YA Arthurian retelling that follows Guinevere, except Guinevere isn't really Guinevere, but is a changeling, and she has been sent by Merlin to Camelot to help Arthur. And so this was the finale of the series. I somewhere in my WhatsApp messages with Scylla, I think I have a like 20 or 25 minute voice message just complaining about the absolute bullshit that was this final book in the series. I actually can't even remember most of the things I complained about. I know I really hated like how little sense the romance made, because it ended up being sapphic, but it wasn't really set up at that point. Like, it was set up in the first book somewhat, but then the romantic chemistry between the 2 sapphic characters just completely vanished. So I was like, oh, I guess not. But apparently Kirsten White saw how many people thought it was gonna be sapphic, so she ended up making it sapphic in any case, which didn't make sense because our main character had way better chemistry with another character. And then, yeah, it just, I can't say the ending because I guess that would be spoilers, but then again, if you're on my channel, do you even care about YA high fantasy? I guess just skip ahead to when this cover isn't on screen anymore if you don't want to be spoiled to the series. But basically the ending was that our main character is still married to Arthur, but she's now in a relationship with Guinevere. With Lancelot, who is female in the series, which she never told Arthur about, but Arthur and her don't really have a romantic relationship, and it's just kind of weird. Also, she literally kisses and fucks every male character that she has even a semblance of a romance with. Well, she doesn't fuck every single male character, she mostly just fucks Mordred, but you never see her kiss Lancelot. Like, they only hold hands. So it just, I don't know, it just felt like the author was really uncomfortable with the idea of a sapphic romance, but also felt like she had to end it that way. It was a mess. It was a mess and a half. It was horrible. So yeah, moving on. Second to last book I have is Malice by Heather Walters. I did want to film a full rant review of this one after I finished it, but then I waited too long and I forgot about everything that I hated about this book. So now it was one of those books that I hate so much that my brain went delete everything. So I can't even tell you that much about why I hated it anymore right now. Like, I did give it 1.5 stars, so I guess a little bit more than 1 star. But some of the things that I hated about it were the writing style, which was first person present tense, which just is the worst writing style objectively out there. I don't care what anyone else thinks. It's just the worst writing style. Our main character, it felt like it should have been like enemies to lovers, because this is kind of a Sleeping Beauty retelling. But the thing is, it's not enemies to lovers. Like, our main character and the princess, like, our main character is supposed to be the villainess. Our main character and the princess never even have subtle dislike for each other, like they are intrigued by each other right away. Then our main character is also set up as the villain of the, you know, original Sleeping Beauty story, except she's really not. Like, she's not a villain whatsoever. It's just that everyone hates her and everyone thinks she's the villain, which, you know, then makes it very understandable why she just goes completely apeshit. But yeah, I just hated everything about this book. I only got through it because the writing style was really easy to read. And then the #1 book I hated the most this year will come to no one's surprise if you have seen my December wrap-up, and that is The Lost Metal by Brandon Sanderson. I already had a 10-minute rant, 8-minute rant in that video about everything I hated about The Lost Metal, so I'm wondering if I should repeat everything here. But my main things were Wayne absolutely sucks as a character. Like, he's not the funny guy type character. First of all, Brandon Sanderson's humor is horrible. Second of all, Wayne is a character where, like, it seems like Brandon Sanderson thinks that he can go and be like, yeah, Wayne is gonna say some terribly misogynistic shit, but it's okay because this other character calls him out on it, except that other character doesn't really call him out on him saying misogynistic shit, and Wayne doesn't ever get any consequences for his misogyny. I would really suggest Brandon Sanderson watch that video that's on YouTube by, I don't know the name of the channel anymore, but it's called The Adorkable Misogyny of the Big Bang Theory. And yeah, basically that's what Wayne is. Also, Brandon Sanderson's humor just sucks. At least it's not my type of humor. Wayne is also not the funny guy character that, you know, is a good funny guy character. Because usually when you have a funny guy character, the reason you have a funny guy character is that they can be funny, but then at one point they're just really not funny at all anymore. And you're like, oh shit. That never happens with Wayne. So Wayne is a failure as a funny guy character. That's what I wanted to say. And yeah, so what else was there? What else was there why the book sucked? The writing style. Brandon Sanderson just doesn't have an editor anymore, apparently. I mean, he does, I guess, but, you know, his editor, either Brandon Sanderson doesn't change anything after his editor went through it, or his editor just sucks at his job. So yeah, the writing style is just, reads like a first draft. It's terrible. I hate Brandon Sanderson's writing. And then the last thing that really annoyed me was that this book was more concerned with setting up the broader Cosmere and all the connection and just dropping words without ever explaining them, which is not how Easter eggs work. Like, what the fuck? Also, my hair is just a mess right now. That's why I'm fussing a lot with it. I don't like how it looks right now. But anyway, I'm almost done with the video, so it's fine, I guess. Brandon Sanderson doesn't know how Easter eggs work, because for Easter eggs to understand Easter eggs, you kind of have to have some previous knowledge already. So, you know, it's a nice thing to set up an Easter egg in a way, and I actually found that as a recent example from Brandon Sanderson's works. It's a nice Easter egg if you have a character who then uses a phrase that you would usually connect to another one of Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, planet, worlds, systems, you know? That's an Easter egg, because then you can be like, oh, well, if you're, you know, aware enough of the Cosmere, you can be like, oh, I guess that person is from that other planet. However, it does not impact the plot that much. What Brandon Sanderson does is he just drops terms that we have never seen before, except maybe if you go to his interviews and you read his interviews, and then does not explain those terms whatsoever. And it's just like, yeah, this is an Easter egg for future books, I guess. Isn't it amazing? No, it's not. I hate it. So yeah, Brandon Sanderson was in the finale of a series more concerned with setting up the broader Cosmere than actually, you know, finishing the series at hand satisfyingly. It's like, what even is going on? So yeah, I hate it. It's horrible. I gave it 0.25 stars. But yeah. that was it for my most hated books of 2022. Well, the books that I liked the least and that were my biggest disappointments in 2022. And so all that's left to do is ask you, have you read any of the books that I mentioned, and did you in fact love them? Which, you know, all power to you. I never want anyone to not enjoy a book that they're reading. If you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. All the links to my social media as well as to my book club will be linked down below, so go and check those out, and I hope I'll see you very soon. Bye!